I don't want any two people to be the same. And then when we come together, we have something that's really incredibly special. I don't need to hire another me. There are no other me's on the team. I'm not that person who just keeps hiring themselves. So I really like what we all bring to the table is something really special.
Hi, welcome to Brand Storytellers, where we talk to the people that build the brands that everyone loves, and we find out the secrets to their success. Today, we'll be talking to Dominique Monet, who is a creative director at GSD&M Advertising in Austin, Texas. Dominique has become a thought leader in building authentic brands through diverse and multi-talented teams. So let's find out the secret to her success now. Let's get started.
I feel like we do a lot of ad speak. We're often in a lot of meetings. It's 27 hands that touch things, but it's just how do people talk? What do real people care about? We're marketers getting paid to think very critically about what's often very simple things. It's very human things. So sometimes I'm like, hey, let's just take our marketing hats off for a second. We're at the house, we're watching the game. This comes on. Do you get it? Does it feel real? Does it feel corny? Does it feel try hard? And it seems really simple, but it's often really hard for brands to grasp.
So that's a bit of a challenge, it sounds like,
Yeah.
to get a client there, to get maybe ourselves out of that box.
Yeah. And a lot of us we aren't the target, and that's fine. We get paid to study a target, understand the target. I hear men say, men sell tampons to women. Like, you don't have to be the target, and you don't. But I think it's about having that right balance of people on the team who live it every day. The higher up you move in any environment, the less connected you often are to what's really happening on the ground. So I think it's important to stay connected. Like, what environments are you in? Not just reading about your target, but living, in the spaces that your target lives and having that experience. I think we lose that. So I'm constantly going, yeah, but like, how do people say it? Like, how do people talk? Or learning the art of, well, some people don't know and they'll never know. And so it's my job to teach them and hopefully build some trust that you believe me when I tell you, like, I know this is foreign to you, but this is very real here. Like,
Right.
it was nothing worse than being a kid and, seeing a Sprite commercial that's trying so hard to be cool. You could smell it. You could just sniff it out. And you're like, oh, this is terrible. So the older I get, the more I don't want to be that person.
Is there something going on today that you've noticed that you feel like is very authentic, that is reaching that true voice that it should?
So the country is just becoming more multicultural, it just is. And so we have to understand who we're selling to. And I feel like Beats by Dre knows their target. They don't just sell to Black folks, it's a mindset. They have deep hip hop roots, but they are very for the people. And but they did a few years ago. Solange directed it, Beyonce's sister, but a Grammy Award winner artist in her own right. So let me not reduce her to Beyonce's sister, just for those who don't know. But no, she was a part of that project. So they partnered with people who really influence culture in a deep way. So that was really nice. I'd say Beats by Dre does it better than a lot of people. And Nike's always been good at it, just
Very good.
understanding the athlete mindset, because culture is not just race or gender. Like, it is a mindset, and they get that. They get that competitive mindset and they nail it. They're just so good at it.
So you lead a team of people.
Yeah.
How do you talk to them about finding an authentic voice, or, being somebody they may not be, in a
Mm.
sense of reflecting that person in the brand?
One of my reminders is always go where they go. Like, you wrote this and I like the idea, right? Because I work with very smart people. So they're not just writing something for the sake of it. It's like, okay, like this thought, but how would they say it? All right. Maybe you're not on TikTok, but go to TikTok. Follow some people they're following,
Right.
study it. It's like, if I work with a celebrity, I have to study the celebrity. I study their history, I study their present, I really learn their voice so that what I'm writing for them feels authentic to them. And it's the same way. We can't just rely on our strategists to give us everything we need to know in a brief. That's research we have to do, and we have to walk the walk and talk the talk. So that's usually my thing to them is, have you been where they've been? Have you watched what they've watched? Have you played where they've played? And it's the same thing I do. So I challenge them to do that. And they often come back with something, even better than what they brought before. Sometimes it's what you said is just shorter, or it's just how you said it and how you tweak it, just a little bit. So that's how I challenge my team. I also build a really well-rounded team.
Do you find a diverse and build a diverse team?
Yeah, I have all ages, all races, different cities. Some of us are in
Mhm.
Austin, some of us are remote, and sometimes we're talking to Gen Z, and sometimes we're talking to millennials, and sometimes it's Gen X. And you know what? And sometimes it's size inclusive. So I need people on my team who are all sizes. If we're selling fashion, it's just whatever we're doing. I don't want any two people to be the same. And then when we come together, we have something that's really incredibly special. I don't need to hire another me. There are no other me's on the team. I'm not that person who just keeps hiring themselves. So I really like what we all bring to the table is something really special. I'm not hiring to fire, I'm hiring to keep you. Like if I do my job well, you're growing, there's retention, we're all happy. So I'll put in that short-term sacrifice to fill in the gap of what's needed. And what's needed can change from this year to next year.
In our business, they talk a lot about, in the business of advertising, how young it can be. And there's a lot of ageism talk that goes on. What about that from an experience standpoint as part of the makeup of your team?
It's interesting. I hear that ageism is a big thing. It really depends on what kind of shop you work at, what the culture is. What
Sure.
I'm finding is that budgets are getting smaller. This is an industry wide thing. Time is getting shorter. So they want it faster, clients want it cheaper, and they want it better. And typically, all three you may not hit. And so when you want to do something faster and cheaper, I actually see the industry leaning more to people who have more years in the game, because it's like, while we want this fresh thinking from somebody out of school, we don't have the time to train you. We just don't have it. We got to get it done. So I'm actually starting to see younger people not get hired, or you're in buildings, but you're not getting the hot project because people don't have the bandwidth to hold your hand. And it's a struggle figuring out what that balance is. So I think it just depends on where you are, what city you're in. I think Austin, I'm here in Austin, is better with ageism and people not aging out of the industry so much. But that's from my limited experience. So you can learn from anyone. There can be younger leaders, older leaders. Again, what's important to me is that we each bring something unique to the table.
Right.
What are the holes that we can fill? And the more specific you are as a person, sometimes the more interesting it is. It's like, what is this script? This is such a specific script, but it's such a good story. It doesn't matter if everyone in America hasn't been through it. It's different. It's a different story. And you can tell that story because you've lived that life and you have that experience. So
I think that is what should fascinate us, is hearing other people's stories, getting their perspective. And if that can be brought into brands, that's a wonderful thing, because brands have to be identified with by the customer.
Exactly.
What brought you to advertising? I'm curious. I probably asked you this before, but remind me, how did you get drawn to this industry?
Yeah, I don't know. It was weird. It's something I wanted to do since I was 12. I used to make up jingles in the shower for fun. Like, who does that? I would remix hip hop songs and make them about McDonald's. Funny, McDonald's ended up being one of my first clients when I started the business. But that was fun for me. Like they say, if you do something you have fun doing, it won't feel like a job a day of your life. Now, I don't know if that's true. It feels like a job.
I think it is a job. It is a job, but I found it to be, when I was at my worst with it, when it was so frustrating, I would think, but what else would I want to do?
To
No, I
do.
want to do this.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. So I've always wanted to do this. I don't know why. There's no advertisers in my family. There was no blueprint in front of me.
Right.
My parents didn't even know I wanted to do it until I did it. And I guess my dad was shocked because it's what he wanted to do, but he never told me that.
Is that right? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I know the first time we met, I was just kind of overwhelmed by your energy and enthusiasm, your big smile, that optimism. And I love that because I feel this business can turn people a bit pessimistic. And so I think that optimism is kind of food for creativity. And
Yeah.
so I want to talk to you a little bit about how you stay charged up, how you charge up your team, things like that. What keeps you
Mm.
going?
That's a good question, especially after such a difficult time in COVID.
Mm,
So I was such an extrovert and I needed to be around people. I joined advertising because it's a team sport. I was an athlete growing up. So just always working with a team, coming together to solve problems, that was always very interesting to me. And then in COVID, working from home, I worked from home for 3 years. So it's
yeah.
like, wait a minute, if I wanted to just be in front of a computer all day, I would have been a graphic designer or an accountant or like literally anything but this job. So
Mm,
I feel like the last 3 years tested my optimism in a very big way. The universe knows, like the universe is so concerned about little old me, but let's pretend that it is, right? It's like the
mhm.
universe knows when I'm about to burn out and it'll just send me a glimmer of hope. So in 2018, I was selected for Cannes Lions See It Be It and went out to Cannes.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Wonderful.
yeah. And it basically was just for what they deemed who would be the future leaders of the industry were for women
Mm,
and really challenging, well, what does leadership look like in this industry? Do we have to do it the way we always do it? Or is there room for innovation? And kind of planted that seed early of what do you want it to look like? And how can we be that change? And I was just a senior copywriter at the time. So kind of envisioning what advertising could be kept me hopeful. And I know somebody listening will probably be like, okay, great, but everybody's not going to be selected for Cannes and be flown out there. They only picked like 20 women in the world, but that's what I
mm,
thought. Like, I
mhm,
wasn't going to apply. And I told my partner at the time at work, I was like, nobody who looks like me who has ever even been selected. Like, what's the
mhm.
chances? They're only picking a few people in the world. He's like, well, nobody who looks like you is going to get selected if you don't apply.
That's
And
true.
so,
That's true.
yeah, it was the last day and I didn't have time to BS or create some story. When you're under the gun, when we talk about authentic storytelling, I'm like,
That's
I'm putting it
right.
all out there. This is how I feel. And they love that.
Right.
And so to be accepted for my true thoughts and
Hmm.
the way I really feel mattered a lot.
Right.
And
Right.
so along the way, I've gained some mentors that I've met who see a lot in me. So even when I lose hope, they don't lose hope and they can keep me focused on where I'm going. That's been incredible. And I've gained mentors just by running my mouth. It's like, who is she? She's really passionate. I was talking about this, but here she is, like talking about advertising. So programs that the industry has created to give us hope has been impactful. Mentors have been impactful. And now the team's coming behind me. And I'm like, wow, they're really excited. And I have the opportunity to make their experience or break their experience. When you look
Right.
at retention and culture, it's usually ladders back up to middle management. And so, it's all these things I wish I would have had. Okay, well, now you can do it. Now you can be
Right.
that change. So I love seeing them and I want to be better for them and I want them to want to be here. So they also give me hope.
Well, and I appreciate you having that attitude because that, in my mind, being able to change an industry for the better, or being able and ultimately change culture for the better, it happens because of passion.
It's interesting. I feel like we all have masculine energy and feminine energy, no matter who we are. And I think the industry has led with a lot of masculine energy, but I'm more balanced. I'm the first girl born in my family in about 50 years.
Oh,
So,
wow. Wow, you were a surprise.
yeah, yeah. My mom was so happy. I had older brothers. I'm married now. I have a husband. Thank God, because your brothers go get married. I'm like, who's gonna be my person. Okay, I got a husband. I got another guy I can hang with. But I grew up in that environment, but I still have my mom, right? And so I just understand the balance of when to push. And I don't think masculine energy is relegated to men and feminine energy is relegated to women, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we all have it. Any gender has it.
Mm-hmm.
So having both, it's just like, yeah, sometimes you tap into that energy because I'm athletic and advertising is a sport and I know how to go hard and I can, it don't matter who in the room, it doesn't matter your position, it doesn't matter your gender. I'm going to say what I'm going to say because I grew up that way. But then there's also a level of empathy, there's a level of compassion. I'm really big on wellness because of things I've experienced working too hard. So sometimes you go through things and you're like, why would this happen to me? I'm strong enough to handle it. And now I have information to hopefully help somebody else not go through it. What makes me different, I feel like, is just that balance of energies and really seeing that we don't have to do it the way we've done it. And I talk a lot. I'm a writer. I write stories. I present, but I do listen. And even if I don't hear it in the moment, it'll play back a little later in my mind. And so I'm listening to what my team is saying to think about, well, maybe I need to switch it up again. How I led 2 years ago doesn't have to be the way I lead now. Sometimes I get it right and sometimes I don't. And that's okay because you learn and we're just all learning together.
So, what kind of tools do you use, or what kind of information do you tap into that others may find helpful?
I'm actually a big advocate of the school of life. Like, if you're in your house and you're just at the computer and at the agency, then you're not living. Well, when we talk about authentic storytelling, you can read it, but when you see it and when you live it, that's going to feel different. That's going to hit different, and that's going to come out of you very differently. So I was switching it up a little bit, but about learning, there's a school of life. But I do judge some award shows, and it takes a lot of time. I don't think people who haven't done it understand how much time it takes. So much time. You can spend like 10 to 20 hours in one award show, and this is just on top of your day job.
Right.
But you're studying all the best things in the industry, sometimes things that aren't so great, and someone's asking your opinion on it.
What about the innovation of the future? I mean, what do you feel may be that we should be tapping into that we haven't tapped into, or just where do you see us going?
Yeah. The innovation is such an interesting question. It's like at one point there was radio and there wasn't TV, right? And then TV came, and I imagine it was like, oh, TV. But at the end of the day, it's storytelling. Now, AI is all the rage, but it's really been here the whole time. People just didn't focus on the fact that that's what it was called. So I'm less caught up in the technology. I think it's great to have technology experts and I partner with them. But I think if we get so caught up into that, then we lose the storytelling, then we lose the humanity, then we lose the point we're making. So I'm always more interested in what's that idea that we're trying to get across? What's that breakthrough idea? And sometimes the idea is not new, but sometimes maybe we've heard that idea before, but in this moment in time, in this moment in history, in this moment in culture, this generation hasn't heard it, or they haven't heard it like that, or we need it now more than ever.
Yeah.
So I just try not to get caught up in it all.
I think that's
And
good.
I've worked at the super high tech places and I've worked at the not super high tech. Um, but the storytelling is what's the same.
Right.
And that's one cool thing about that I noticed when I came to GSD&M. I was like, wow, there are people here like over 40. That's pretty cool. Everybody's not a toddler. And I hadn't seen that in the industry before.
What is one of the most profound things that you learned that really, really helped you the most in your career? If there was one thing.
I was actually listening to a podcast from somebody else. His name is Corey Seaton. He was one of my creative directors when I was coming up. And he was just like, the title is the title. Like, a lot of the respect you get and all of that is because of a title. If you don't have that title, you're just a regular person, right? And the point of that statement is our ego can't get lost in a title. Yeah, it's like, first of all, you can be just starting out of school and still be a leader, even if you don't have the title. A title doesn't give you leadership. You are a leader or you're not. And then when you do have this title that says you're a leader, one person's title isn't bigger than another. Like I said, I can be talking to the CEO or to the junior writer. We're all human, because when you take away the title, we're just people
Right.
in a world connecting to human stories. And so sometimes I need to take off my title. And when I'm talking to people who might not have a CD title or a director title, and sometimes I need to not be intimidated by someone else's and connect on a human level, because we're all creatives. Even if you're on the, account management side or client services, you're still creative.
Absolutely.
So I try not to get caught in that and caught in the ego of it all.
I think that's great advice.
I hope so. I hope so.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure
Mhm.
it does. You seem very kind. So, uh, one of the things about technology, we would go back to that a little bit. I mean, when you think about I guess the attention span that we have, and I am really, really bad about this, is that now it's like the TikTok, the YouTube short thing, and how quick we go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and storytelling has to still happen in that environment. So
Mhm.
have you faced that with your team of we've got to still connect, but we don't have the time to connect. So how do you face that challenge?
It's tough having a short amount of time, but I think it makes you focus in on the bullseye, focus in on the target, get to it, get
Right.
clever. It makes our job harder, but that's the challenge. That's what we're getting paid to do. So I'm not afraid of that. And it's kind of refreshing in a way. But I will say this: when people like what you're saying, they won't hit skip or they'll let it keep going. That's
That's
true. If
right.
you don't bury the lead, we used to bury the lead. Oh, well, then you get to the end and it's this nice moment. No, start out interesting.
Right.
And then once we grab them, you'd be surprised how many people stick along for the ride.
And that's always been true, even when we had more time, even when it was a 30-second commercial. How do you foster innovation in a team?
So I find that people are eager to do something breakthrough. It's not for a lack of ideas. It's just, how do you sell this in to marketers? Or sometimes the marketers are excited, but how do you sell that into the franchisees when they're just looking at the bottom line? So that's the art of selling becomes more and more important the higher up I'm getting. But what we can sell, I'm pleasantly surprised all the time with what's on their minds.
It has one of those victories been where you sold something you didn't think you would sell.
I know there was one time in my career we were working on something, and me and my partner, we just couldn't find the right story. And one of my techniques sometimes is pick a celebrity, like who would embody this story or who would embody the brand. Doesn't mean you'll ever use them, but sometimes if you write through their lens or if you pick like a character on TV, it starts to unravel an interesting story. And so we picked one, and I would always do her imitation when I did the script, and we presented it to the client that way. There's no celebrity budget, but it's what I needed to do to find the voice. And the imitation was so good, they couldn't see it with anybody else. And then they end up finding like an extra $350,000 to get this person.
How else can we make the advertising industry more appealing? Because there are a lot of negatives that people can look at, and like they may go, I want to go to tech. Now they may be going for the reasons of perks,
Mhm.
but what should advertising be doing that it's not doing? What do we need to address?
One thing that's nice that didn't exist so much when I was coming into the business is when I look across leadership, it looks very different. And when I went to see it, be it in Cannes, I wasn't seeing anything out there that
Yeah.
looked like me. Like, who was it? Shannon Washington was my career crush, and she was ACD at the time. And now, global CCO, first Black woman to do it. But when I was coming up, no one had done it yet. Very few people had. It was just very few examples. So I think we're seeing a lot more examples, which is encouraging. the one school started. So advertising went from you got to know somebody to there's portfolio school, but you got to be privileged enough to afford it. And now, how do we tap into people who aren't as privileged? So the one school is an opportunity to do that. Job propulsion lab. Do you have to
Yeah.
pay to go to it? Yes, but it's not $50,000.
No.
So you're also a solution that didn't exist when I was coming up. So I think there are some things that are visibly getting better. I do feel like we need to get our pay in order, our hours in order, and we're the leaders and we set the tone. So I find personally that when generations coming up can get more work-life balance, they're more interested because they do want to be a
Absolutely.
DJ on the side and they do want to do directing on the side. And I want them to do that because those creative things, fuel them and they end up bringing it to a script or
That's
into
right.
our creativity.
Absolutely.
So I think it's just, yeah, it's a thousand things going on. But is it really an emergency? Can we calm it down? Because we can't change the demands, but we
Right.
can change our mindset to them. We can change how we approach them.
Literally heard this conversation for 30 years about those very things. So they're not being addressed as they should be.
Yeah.
Do you feel
And then,
like the younger generation will help them be addressed, though, just out of the demand of I want balance in my life?
oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
They are speaking up more about their boundaries, and I support those messages
Mm.
personally. I remember being on the cheerleading squad in high school, and my mother was a city councilwoman growing up. So that's where we were living in a suburb of Chicago, Country Club Hills. I remember them calling me off the sideline, the announcer, and I'm like, that's strange. And then my coach pulls me to the side and she's like, we need to go to the hospital. Your mother's in the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah. And she had it was either a heart attack. I think it was a heart attack.
Mm.
And it was stress related. So she was an exec at her company, first Black woman to ever do something like that at her company. So I had that example. But I saw at a very early age what stress can do to you.
Right.
And so I had my moment in the industry where I've ended up hospitalized because of stress. And, me and my mother have had to have that talk where she comes from a generation of keep going. And I'm like, but I saw how it was for you. So, like, can you really tell me that's the right thing to do? And she can't.
No.
Right. So I'm using my example to say now we have social media. So it doesn't have to be your mom. People are seeing people's stories. They're following people in real time and they're going like, ugh, I don't like that. I see what's happening to you. They're looking at millennials and going, ooh, y'all worked really hard, but y'all still can't even afford a house. You have all these degrees, but you're still not making money. The entry level cost of what the entry level employee for a copywriter is the same as when I started, but
Mm.
inflation is crazy.
Yeah.
So they see that it's not a dream. They see that it's not a fairy tale. And they're like, I'd rather be broke and not in debt than pay all this money for ad school and a degree and be burnt into the ground. And I still don't have money. So they see that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. We can't hide it anymore.
They want to succeed
They do.
and they're motivated to work, but they want it to make sense.
And it should make sense. And you talked about the joy. When they don't have joy, the work doesn't have joy. I can see
No.
it. And
Right.
I'll have to tell them sometimes, like, okay, I know how counterintuitive this may sound, but
Right.
walk away from it. It's due tomorrow. I know. But what you've been putting out the
Yeah.
last 4 hours is
Right.
not it.
Yeah.
So, can you be a morning person? Is that an option? Okay, go relax tonight. Come back to it in the morning, even though it's due tomorrow. Or come back to it late. I don't know, but go find you some joy.
Passion. So I thank you so much for sharing. I've learned so much from you just in this hour, and I kind of knew I would, but you even surprised me in some ways, and I see such a bright future for you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all that you do. You've been a real staple in this community, a staple in Austin. I've sent students to you where I'm like, oh, how are they going to make it? You know what? I can send them to Bart. At least there's a more affordable
Please do.
pathway, somebody with some experience.
What's the big goal for Dominique?
I don't know. Advertising, just like it's a path to other people's passions, it's a platform for me to inspire. to make people laugh, to make them smile. It's a platform to send out positivity. I get to do that with the ads. Like there's me, and then there's these platforms that brands give me. So maybe I'll do advertising forever, and maybe I won't. But what matters is the impact, and I hope I'm leaving a positive impact and a positive impression. And I want people to feel more hopeful after they meet me than before they met me. So that's what's in it for me. It's impact and inspiration.
I just love every time I talk to Dominique, I learn something new. If you like this episode, hit that subscribe button and that like button for us so we can make more. And if you have a comment, we'd love to hear from you and learn what you would like to know about brand storytelling.